Yeah, yeah. Coming up next on Mental Health Matters with Marty, the crisis with children and COVID schooling. Hey, let's talk about it, y'all. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody? It's Marty Sellers, your mental health hygienist, coming to you live and in living color all the way from Southern California, where the sun is always shining. Hey, y'all like my new background? I am loving it. And shout out to Mrs. Mitchell all the way from the ATL who said, Marty, keep that background. So listen, I like to thank you for the positive feedback, and I'm loving it as well. Listen, we're all about branding and making a difference in our people's life to let you know that you don't no longer have to secretly suffer in silence in the shadow of shame. But y'all know what I say each week. You got to speak up, speak out, and live. Why? So we can enjoy your life. That's why we have that theme song. Listen, I'm so glad you joined me for another Tuesday here with Mental Health Matters with Marty. Now, let's get to the point of this. What do we do? The Mental Health Matters with Marty show is a psychoeducational show that is meant to be a supplement. Come on and touch your neighbor and say, supplement to your mental health journey. We are not a substitute. Listen, we want to be a part of your treatment plan that your therapist, your psychologist, your psychiatrist, your doctor, I was going to say the weed man, y'all pray my strength, what have you. Listen, we are a supplement to your mental health journey because we don't want you to suffer in silence, because too many of us do not acknowledge that we are going through any type of mental health crisis. So if you're experiencing any type of mental health crises or even emergency, please go to your nearest urgent care or dial 911. Listen, it's okay to say that you are not okay, especially with everything that is going on. Now, how do you stay engaged with us on this show? Well, there are two main platforms that we want you to engage on. If you are on Facebook, we want you to engage on the Mental Health Matters with Marty page. If you're on my personal page or Marcel Consulting or anyone else's page, please jump on the Mental Health Matters with Marty page, because that's how we will see your comments. We are not trying to ignore you, so do not take it personal. So many of you contact me. Are you trying to ignore me? No, we're not trying to ignore you, but we want to make sure we're streamlining this. Or if you are on YouTube, please check out the Marcel Media Group page so that we can see your comments, we can respond appropriately, and make sure that we are attending to your needs, your concerns, and your questions. But hey, y'all, I hope all is well. It is still hot out here in Southern California. We are not quite in the triple digits. Miss Jasmine, how are you, darling? Good to see you. Yes, y'all, if you need a social media person, call up Jasmine. Jaron, what's going on, my brother? How you feeling? Come on, let's do a shout out. Let us know you're out there. Who's all out there? Paula, How are you? We hope everything is going well out there in the Connecticut area. Listen, darling, praying for you as we are talking about Suicide Awareness September. And my company slogan has been Simple Solutions. But those of you who are struggling and have suffered with that by lost loved ones, friends, colleagues, our heart goes out to you. And we want you to know you are not alone in this. And we want to make sure that we are having the necessary conversations, especially in our communities, to don't allow the smiles and the laughters of others to cover up that they are hurting inside. So make sure that we are paying attention and we're having these very important conversations. So if you're on IG, please check out, I've been doing a 30-day positivity challenge. Every day I've been posting a 1-minute video on how we can combat this thing by making sure we are having a positive action and putting it into place, not just talking about it, but being about it. One of the main things that happens in therapy, we cannot just talk about what we want to do. The hardest part is taking that lip service and making it life service. And that's what we want to do. In order to stop the stinking thinking, we have to make sure that we are taking our mindset from out of the gutter from where it's at and putting it on the mountaintop, putting it in the area that we want it to be in. And that's how we begin this process. And then following up with our actions. Because remember, our thoughts become our emotions, which dictate into our behaviors. That's that cognitive triad that we're talking about. And we want you to change that by making sure that your thoughts, emotions, and actions are lined up and they're congruent with each other. So I'm so excited about tonight's show. Listen, put some people in the that you know that section I'm talking about, the response section. Yeah, invite some people in the room, y'all. Invite them in the room. I'm so excited to talk about tonight's topic. We're talking about the COVID crisis and kids and what it looks like in the classroom, what it looks like at home, what parenting looks like, and we want to support children while maintaining their mental health. It is so imperative that we do those things. Christian, what's going on now? How you feeling? Yes, it's so important that we recognize the work and the struggles that our children are going through as well. Listen, we are not, just because we are adults does not mean that our children are exempt from going through the anxiety that they feel. They're not exempt from depression. They're not exempt from post-traumatic stress disorder. They're not exempt from the trauma. They're not exempt from adjustment disorder because they were at home for a year and a half. Everyone said, we're just going home for a few days. We're just going home for a few weeks. And it turned into 18 months later. And many children and our young people are struggling from going from home and doing school where, let's admit it, the learning curve was real low during the pandemic. Teachers were frustrated. Teachers couldn't teach. Students weren't learning. Some students didn't have the necessary tools and instruments that they needed to learn. And so some of our kids got passed through. Some of them got passed by. Some of them got passed over. And some of them just passed out. So in all the passing, we want to make sure that we are picking up our kids and helping them get to where they need to. But how do we do that? We have to have the conversations with them to make sure that they are okay. If this is you, if you're having the conversations and you're believing in the conversation, give me a 5, a high five, a thumbs up, or something in the comment section. Hit the likes and the hearts so that we know that you're paying attention tonight. We want to see you respond and react with us tonight. And I am so glad about our guest tonight. This is her first time on the Mental Health Matters with Marty show, but let me tell you, y'all, it is definitely not going to be her last. She is just an expert in so many areas. She was a former school counselor. She's working with not only on a city level through LA County, but on the state level when we're dealing with FFAs and foster family agencies and bringing and teaching us about trauma and trauma awareness with young people. She is soon to be doctor. And listen, anyone, yes, conversations and being okay. Yes, Danny, I needed you on the show because we're talking about parenting and some of these other things. Yes, thank you, Cynthia. That's right. Keep these thumbs up. Thank you, Paula. We got to have these conversations because that's how how we change the stinking thinking, and we can have these conversations with how are you feeling and how can I support you today in your mental health journey. But I'm so glad to have with us on this show, Melanie. How are you? Yes, none other than the soon-to-be Dr. Kimberly Faulkner-Camacho. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Thank you so much, Marty. I'm excited to be here today. Thank you for that title, speaking life into me, getting this dissertation done eventually as we go through
Yes.
this pandemic together. I'm still going to get it done. So thank you so much for
That's
that.
right. That's right. Listen, I want to salute you because a lot of listen, you this is not an honorary doctorate, baby. Not only are you going to have the bill to pay for it to prove it, but you've done the work. You're doing the work, and a lot of people don't understand. Listen, I'm trying to get into there and follow your shoes soon. My goal is next fall to start my doctoral program, and so that's what I'm shooting for. But I salute you. I honor you. So proud when we see professionals, Black women, Black men doing the darn thing and saying, listen, we're not going to allow you to stereotype that. I think grief is important as well. Melanie, you're absolutely so right in that. And I can only imagine some of these, what you're going through, representing from Tree of Life. Come on, that's right. But I salute you for what you're going through and what you're doing to not only I always say we don't want to just do best practice, but we want to create best practice. And I salute you for doing that. But future Dr. Kimberly, I love it. Tell us about yourself and introduce the people to what you do, your expertise, and why you're so passionate about kids.
All right. Well, I am also a CEO of Positive Note Consulting, which is an organization a company that I started just out of my passion for working with kids, for what I do with my own kids, and having those
Right.
conversations with parents when parents may get frustrated and feel like this is overwhelming. And yes, parenting is overwhelming, but there is a
Yes.
beauty in parenting if we can create some type of balance, which is not always easy, but oftentimes we'll go get a fitness coach to help us if we want to lose weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we want
Mm-hmm.
some other type of assistance. So, as a parent coach, I'm not always going to tell you what all the solutions are going to
Right.
be, but I'm going to coach parents through. And I've been able to work with parents to just really coach them and motivate them and pour life back into them. As parents, as adults, we spend a lot of time pouring life back into
Mm-hmm.
kids and everyone else, but we don't stop and pour back into us.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a parenting coach, I'm
Oh,
able
that's
to
good.
really highlight the positives in parents because it's so easy for us to think
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing this well, or look at social media and think, oh, that parent is just, they went to Paris this week. Oh my gosh, we just went to
Right.
Paris, California,
California.
and so, right. And so
And
parents are doing some amazing things. If we could just not
yes.
compare and just focus on, have tunnel vision on what's going on in our house,
Ooh.
then it can work out a lot better for us. But through this pandemic, it's been challenging. And part of my role
Yes.
outside of this is working with school districts throughout the state of California to train educators on what it means to be trauma informed, what it
Yeah.
means to have a different lens when we look at student behavior,
Yes.
helping us to understand that our kids are going through something too. It's not just
Yes.
us. So being intentional about recognizing what they're going through and helping them to make adjustments, but helping us, the adult, to make adjustments along the way.
I love that, Dr. Kimberly. Yes, and what you're doing there, supporting. Yes, listen, you got it already. So yes, I'm gonna say that. Listen, you've earned the title. You know, with you said something that's very key. Training other teachers and about trauma informed. That's a word that is thrown around in our profession a lot. But maybe for
Mhm.
the person who does not understand what that means when you're talking about trauma informed, what does that mean when we're talking about trauma informed training, trauma informed coaching, trauma informed support? What does that mean in layman's terms so we get a better understanding of that?
Okay. So in the past, when we looked at behavior of kids, it
Hmm.
was easy for people to say kids are bad. That kid is just being bad,
Right.
or that kid just wants to make me have a bad day, or to say what's
Right.
wrong with this kid. Becoming trauma informed help people to look at behavior different, to look at the adult, to look
Hmm.
at the response, to have an understanding that
Yes.
when people experience trauma, your brain has a response to trauma. There's a chemical reaction. All these things start to happen, and it's not, some things are involuntary. So helping
Yes.
educators and parents understand that some of that behavior is involuntary. You have your amygdala when
Right.
it overreacts in your brain, and just really, I'm not a brain scientist, but helping people just
Come on
briefly
and teach
understand
us.
that brain and when it shuts down, and the
Yes.
importance of making kids feel safe. When our kids
Yes.
think they have a bad dream, and they come in the
Hmm.
room, say, "Mom, Dad, I'm scared," and they get in the bed, they can sleep because they're comfortable.
Hmm.
But if you're
Hmm.
in a classroom and you don't feel safe, you can't go to your teacher and say, "I don't feel safe." Helping teachers
Right.
to recognize those signs, helping parents to really understand, you know what, I didn't think my kid went through trauma, but we all went through
Right.
something traumatic with this pandemic. And
Yes.
recognizing the signs of how our kids are responding, even though it may have not been some type of trauma that you can see. COVID is something
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
happened, and it's happening to
We
all
all
of us,
felt it.
including our babies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's so important because I think a lot of us don't realize the traumatic effect that especially in our communities, that COVID had on us because it shut us down so quickly. Our lives drastically changed. We were no longer permitted to go outside. We were afraid of
Hmm.
everyone. We now have to wear masks. Now they're talking about people dying, the deaths, and all
Right.
of that. And especially if we're not having these conversations, why is it? And you said something very important I want to go back to as well. And I think it leads to the conversation. Why is it imperative and so vital that parents, and we had this conversation before we got on online here, talk to teachers and having that conversation and the pairing of that so that they get a better understanding of their child in the classroom. And now we can, if I can say it this way, we're creating a more integrative treatment plan to help the kids.
Hmm. That parent teacher relationship is so important. As a parent,
Hmm.
we are our child's biggest advocate. It's our voice that
Yes.
matters just as much as the student's voice. And so, working alongside the parent to let them know this is what's going on with my child,
Yes.
making sure they
Yes.
know this is what you might see that shows up in class. Like I remember
Yes.
for one of my sons, he's a very good kid, but the teacher had the nerve to label him. Challenging or difficult. He's never had a suspension
Hmm.
or anything like that. She had no idea
Hmm.
I worked in education. And as a young Black student at the time, he was in the fourth grade. I really felt
Right.
sorry for them once they realized, oh my gosh, not only is she her child's advocate, she works in education. And I had
Yes.
no right to label this, with her son. But I had a similar issue last year with my other son when he was in the fourth grade.
Mm.
And his teacher I'm sorry, third grade, she didn't understand. And I had to say, you know what? We're all going through this pandemic. And do you have
Yes.
check-ins in the morning? Just those simple
That's
check-ins,
good.
just to find out
Yes.
how the kids feel. And I was able to let her know, with permission from my son, how he felt. In order for him to be able to express his feelings, he wrote a
Hmm.
letter and emailed it to me, and it was a dear COVID letter. And he said, "Dear COVID, I don't like you." He said, "I don't have friends anymore. I don't go outside." He said, "I'm
Oh
sad,
my God.
I'm lonely." And he was 8 years old. And he said, "I'm experiencing
Yes.
anxiety." And I had no idea that my son knew what anxiety
Wow.
was. But because
Wow.
COVID allowed us to have bring your child to work day every
Hmm.
day at home, he was
Every day.
listening to me talk to people about
Yes.
trauma. So he learned about anxiety, and he was able to express himself through this letter. And I shared it with his teacher. There was a huge
Wow.
turnaround in his engagement, in the way she responded to him, because I am his advocate. Yes, love check-ins,
Yes.
Danny. Love
Yes.
check-ins are, I do them
Yes.
often. As a parent, I send my
Yes.
kids Zoom links sometimes, just so we can check in via Zoom, because they're so used to checking in or going online. So sometimes we don't do the check-in in the car. I might say, hey, we have a Zoom check-in scheduled Sunday at 4, and they go
Hold
to
on,
the
Dr.
next
Kim.
room and check in.
Hold on, Dr. Kimberly. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Listen, listen. I know, Danny, I'm with you. Dear COVID letter. Listen. Dr. Kimberly is dropping so many nuggets, y'all. Y'all need to get every parent you can get on here and tell them they got 5 minutes to get on here so they can go ahead and get these nuggets. Gloria Miller in an outbreak of measles. Yes, okay. Vaccine against measles. Yes, okay. Thank you, Gloria. You're absolutely right about, again, that's trauma that she's talking about. I want to go back to some of these things that Dr. Kimberly has dropped on us. Listen, get these parents in here because she's here to bless your life, and she's gonna put up her cash app to young show sister some love because she got some books and some student loans she got to pay off. But listen, dear COVID, OMG, you just blessed my life with that one. That your son sent and emailed you a dear COVID letter, and then you got a better insight. What did that do for you as a parent when you read all of that? How? Okay, I don't want to go to therapy and go, how did you feel? But really, how did you respond? How did you respond to that?
You know what?
And how did it change your thoughts?
I paused for a second because, sometimes we think we know our kids because we might check in and still go talk. But just that letter was so detailed, and it allowed him to really express himself without any interruptions. And it made me pause. And instead of responding back via email, I did go in and we sat down and I told him, thank you. I said, thank you for sending me that. I said, it takes a lot to be able to express yourself. And I highlighted his resilience. I highlighted his ability to write that, and I highlighted his strengths, and I said, God, what else can I do to support you? When you're home, when you're in here by yourself and I'm in here training, what can I do? And he said, can I train with you? And so there were a few trainings where some school districts were introduced to my son. And I said, as a parent, we had to adjust. COVID has caused us to work different, to parent different. I said, so my son is next to me, and with your permission, he's going to sit with us through this training. I said, I'm talking to you about how to support kids and how to put the oxygen mask on first, but I got to practice what I preach. And I said, I have nowhere to send him, and I don't want him to feel like he's burdened. So he was able to participate, and he sat at the computer with me. He went to a breakout session, and he was talking about strengths. So I just found a way to include him as best as I could because I wanted to validate his feelings, and I wanted to let him know you're normal. How you feel is normal. And like Landon saying, giving them the ability to express their emotions and feelings. I did that, and it's like that movie Inside Out, where the little people, joy and anger and sadness, they really start to express their feelings. I even popped that back on during COVID because it was a reminder of it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be angry, and some people might think, oh, it's a kid movie. No, I watched it with my 12-year-old, 8-year-old,
that movie's
5-year-old.
good.
It is. It really is. So Inside Out is what is it? Inside Out? Yeah, I think it's called Inside Out.
It is. It is. See, I'm gonna hit you. We're gonna get to Paula's question here, but listen, y'all. I'm serious. Don't play with me. Dr. Kimberly is dropping. She didn't drop some more nuggets. Get that movie Inside Out because it does talk about emotions and all the different emotions, and it's good for everyone. So Paula has this question. So it hits different with kids. They now more than we think they do, and their feelings are valid. What can we do specifically to help children to stop suffering in silence? That's a good question, Paula. I think the Dear COVID letter is a great one that we definitely can do. What else would you suggest, Dr. Kimberly, that we can do?
Role modeling how that is. Being able to be transparent as a parent and not make it seem like, even though we're going through COVID, I'm okay. Every single day I'm fine. Some days I'm not fine. And I'm able to tell my kids, today is pretty hard. And I miss going outside. I miss going to Disneyland. And I let them know you're not the only one that feels that way. Like, it's okay. And I try to role model that. In addition, on Sunday nights, we do journaling. And sometimes we don't have time. But I just picked up some cheap journals from Marshall's or Burlington Coal Factory, and they write down their feelings or whatever their goal is for the week or whatever it is. I try to have different ways so that they're not suffering in silence, feeling like, well, I have to always verbally express how I feel, but
Right.
providing them with various outlets. You can write in a journal, you can send me an email, you can send me a song to tell you how you feel.
Right.
Whatever that is, because they've sent me songs and I've learned about their feelings through
Can't.
songs. So
Yeah.
those are just a few things I would suggest.
Yes, totally agree with you with doing that. And I love that because I love the journaling. And even with the younger kids, even though they may not be able to write, they can color, they can draw
Hmm.
pictures with that games.
Oh yeah.
Those are always great reliefs. And sometimes you just got to have a break and say, listen, we're not going to school today. We all taking a mental health breather, and we
Hmm.
or dancing. I love dance breaks. Now my son, who's 23, laughs at my daughter and I. As we have sometimes we just have a dance break because we need to get this frustration and anger and anxiety out. And playing your favorite song can definitely do that
Yes.
as well. Yes, 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 yes. I love that. See, oh look, everybody here to support you, Dr. Kim. I love it. I love it. I love that. You had dropped another amazing nugget. You talked about having the conversation, and I want to go back to last thing with the dear COVID letter. You then
Hmm.
took that letter and shared it with his teacher. So
I did.
his teacher got an understanding. And you said it made a huge change even in their relationship because she got better insight on him. How did you see it really even affected your son, even in a positive way?
You know what? It prompted his teacher to focus more on the positive. I asked her, I said, although I appreciate you communicating with me, what she was doing is telling me he didn't turn in his work. He turned in this late. And I said,
Right, right.
he's 8 and he's doing the best that he
Yes.
can. And I would appreciate it if you would recognize what he is doing. Let's highlight his what he's doing instead of focusing on the negative. I said, so
Yes.
for every message you send me that what he didn't do, I said, can you please tell me what he did right? And then I said, please listen to this letter.
Ah,
And so she started texting me at the end of the day and said, he participated. He led a group. He did a presentation. He turned
yes.
this in on time. He made up some work. And he was saying, Mom, my teacher called on me. Like, I got to lead a group today. And my son's in a dual language Spanish program. So just to back
Come
up
on,
a
hablas
bit,
español.
he, oh, yo hablo poquito español. Pero it's this learning loss thing, and I told his teacher I don't want to
Yes.
focus so much on the learning loss because he's not fully immersed in that program. We're
Yes.
at home doing the best that
Yes.
we can. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, Layden, I'm sorry, Laden,
Landon.
we want to
Uh-huh.
land. Okay, I want to highlight
Layden, I'm
the
sorry.
Okay, Layden, I definitely was big on highlighting the positives because I want to build my kids' spirits. I want to pour into them. And I think that if we can get teachers on board to build, uplift, and edify these kids, helps us all. But I also highlighted the fact that, or I also tell the teacher, I understand that this is challenging and there's no blueprint to
Yes.
teaching in a pandemic, just like there's no blueprint to parenting. So how can we work together? How can I
Mm-hmm.
support you? And how can you support me? And I said, this is not just for my kid, it's for all the kids in this class. I didn't want to get into the
Love
whole
that.
trauma thing because my kids will
Right.
say, my mommy teaches trauma, you need some training. And so I said, don't say that. Don't say that to
Ah,
your teachers, please, because then they
I
get an
love it. They
attitude
like
with me.
we can get you straight, teacher. My mama could
They
help you out
do.
because you're not doing this right. I love it. I love. We have so many educators that's on the line. Jonathan Davis, good to see you. He's an educator out here at Pasadena Community College, I believe that is.
Okay.
Really good. So we got to get you two linked as well. That is so important because I love what you're saying here because what I've seen is this pattern, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Somewhere around third, fourth, fifth grade, we have to be careful how teachers label specifically our young African American males. And they want
Mm-hmm.
to put this label on them being disruptive,
Mm-hmm.
being oppositional or
Mm-hmm.
defiant. And they start to then label them. And then even, I always look at the placement where they're at in the classroom as well.
Mhm.
because that can easily tell. So I think those are some great things. And I love that we as parents, we have to help advocate for those children and help change the narrative on how the not only the teacher thinks about them, but what our children, especially our young Black boys, believe about themselves. Why is that so important today?
You know what? That's I'll share with you. Last night, my son, the 8-year-old, the 9-year-old, sorry,
Uh-huh.
he came home and he
Uh-huh.
said, "Mom," he said, "there was a black male teacher today in the other class." He said, and me and my friend said, "Wow." He said, "Man, they so lucky they had
Yes.
a black male teacher." He said, "I've never seen that."
Yes.
And I was sitting there like, wow, like, and
Yes.
I know they haven't had a black teacher, but just to hear him say that out loud, like, as
Mm-hmm.
parents, we try to find the best schools for our kid, and for me, I try to
Yes.
find schools that are diverse, because
Yes.
although I want them to get the best education, I still want them to be in an environment where they're going to still see
Yes.
some people like them and feel like
Yes.
I matter. And so, as a parent, I'm constantly talking and pouring love into. Hey, Kelly, and my sister just shouted me out.
Hey,
Um,
Kelly.
but talking to our kids, for example, when I talk to my kids about Black history, I don't focus on slavery. I focus on,
Right.
we are resilient people. Look at how
Yes.
resilient we are. Look at how, in spite
Yes.
of this, we are mathematicians. We invented all
Yes.
these amazing things. So my kids take that to school, and they're constantly asking, "What about Granville T. Woods? What about Benjamin Banneker?" And my
Right.
son said, they called me and they said, "Your son came in and said, he wants to know, why do we celebrate presidents that used to own slaves and not Black History Month?" And
Mm.
I said, "So you called me in? You want me to answer the question, or did you
Mm-hmm.
respond to him? What was wrong?"
Thank
And they
you.
tried to explain, well, we just we don't celebrate. I said, right, you don't
Mm.
celebrate anyone. So tell me, how are you? Uh, what is your culturally relevant background? What's your culturally relevant
Yes.
pedagogy? What are your responses to students? I said, because you don't have anyone that looks like my kids, not unless they're
Right.
Spanish. And my kids are Mexican and Black. They call themselves double brown. But and so talking to schools about that, that's traumatic in itself. Like,
It
the
is.
fact
It
that they don't
is.
they don't see that. And so being aware of how that shows up, being aware of racial trauma, when you
Mm-hmm.
combine racial trauma with the trauma from the pandemic, now people are saying,
Yes.
well, we don't understand why Black people don't want to be
Yes.
vaccinated. And I'm not anti-vax, but people need
Mm-hmm.
to learn the history and walk in
Yes.
someone else's
Yes.
shoes before they
Yes.
judge. And
Yes.
so, just, there's so many different factors, there's so many things that go into our response to this pandemic, us parenting during this pandemic, us supporting our
Yes.
kids, and having the tools to be able to support them. I think that's key as well.
Totally. You're absolutely right. And listen, y'all, I'm here to tell you, keep responding. Daryl's having an amazing time putting up all the comments. But again, if you want to comment, we want you to go to the Mental Health Matters with Marty page, and also the what is that? Oh, Marcel Media Group. I got to look down and see that. But we got Dr. Kimberly on here, y'all, and y'all need to pull and put everyone in the comment section and tell them they need to come in here, because she is dropping so many jewels and so much wisdom to us that it is ridiculous, and you're getting it for free. Now, she will take a donation. We prefer cash, but but it's so important, because a dear friend of mine is a Black male teacher in Dallas, and he is a kindergarten teacher, which is
Mm,
almost unheard of, a Black male kindergarten teacher. And he's just like, Marty, the young men and the kids are just all over me and all this, but they're just excited. And he has, are you ready for this? 32 in one class and no teacher's help. But they know he's
yeah.
gifted in that because the kids listen to him. And he says,
Hmm.
now the kids are trying to buy hats and do all these other things. Hey, Mr. Shepard, will you fix my pants like yours? Or, hey, Mr. Shepard, can I wear a tie like you? But just the role modeling and the
Hmm.
difference that a Black male teacher, or even a great male teacher, can have on the lives of our children, especially for our young Black and brown young boys who need to see other positive role models in their lives from the educational point, because Black men only make up 2% of the
2%.
education of
Hmm.
their 2%. And me as a Black male therapist, I represent 1% of that.
Wow.
So there is something, and we're praying that that number is getting growing some, because I'm trying to push everyone in the therapy, social work, education, because we need more Black men in this field. Y'all, if you believe that, give me a high five, a thumbs up, a dancing emoji, or something, because we have the power to change the narrative of that. So again, yes, yes, representation matters. Jasmine, you are so right. Dr. Kimberly, why is it so now talk to us, because y'all, she's playing her role down. She's a big wig in what she does. I'm trying to grow up and be like Dr. Kimberly. Yes. Talk to us about your education, what you're doing in roles of foster family on both the local level with LA County, but then also on the state level, and maybe even how we can get more involved with foster care, and why is it so important that we as African American, we as Black and brown people get more involved in the system to help out these children who need us.
So when we talk about representation matters, when we talk about trauma, a
Mm-hmm.
high percentage of students in foster care, or kids in foster care, are Black and brown.
Right.
Disproportionately, they are African American, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's so important that kids are able to not only just be in a home where someone loves them. I think that's first and foremost, but to be able to be in
Right.
a home where someone is going to embrace everything about them, where they're going to pour love in them, where they're going to motivate them to be their best, to live in their own skin, to
Right.
embrace their hair,
Right.
to embrace that beautiful skin, to embrace their culture
Yes.
in every sense of the word. But when students go to foster care, remember, my great friend Dr. Lakia Dickerson, who's in here, she always says, we teach kids stranger danger all the time, right? And then we say,
Yes.
oh, this happened, this traumatic event happened. Now you got to go
Mm-hmm.
live with this strange family,
Mm-hmm.
and this family's going to take care of you, but it's going to take some trust. And it's going to take some time. And we need families that
Time.
understand when
Yes.
these kids come to them, they're coming with a lot of trauma. They may say some things
Yes.
that the person may not like, but they are trying to deal with this. Again, in my
Yes.
role, I'm able to help educate caregivers and teachers and about the response to trauma. And so again,
Right.
if I don't feel safe, as a kid, I'm going to try and protect myself as best as I can. So I may say some
Sure.
things that
Sure.
the person doesn't like. And learning about trauma, it doesn't excuse the behavior, but it explains the behavior.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so being a Black parent in foster care, like my mom was, I helped
Mm.
a classmate report abuse. And I promised, I said, if you go to the counselor, I promise my mom's going to come and you can live with us. I promise. She believed me. I called my mom. She came to the school. We reported it. Everything checked out. They arrested the guy. And they said at that time in the 90s, it didn't work that way. They
Mm-hmm.
said, your mom doesn't have a license. My mom quickly tried to
Mm.
get a license, but by this time she was gone. So a year later,
Right.
my mom had kids in foster care. And so my mom went out of not
Wow.
knowing what it means to be trauma informed. Paula's safety was key in her home.
Yes.
Kids didn't call
Yes.
my mom foster mommy. They called her auntie, I'm sorry, because she said it's no
Right.
one's business. And so this
Come.
past year for our kids who've been in
Come
foster
on.
care,
Yeah. Thank
um,
you.
they're dealing with COVID. They're dealing with so
Mm-hmm.
now I'm dealing with the loss of a parent. I'm dealing with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe pre-COVID, I could at least go visit some relatives on the weekend, but now there's
Right.
COVID. I can't go anywhere. So now I live in this home. I have to do my classes online. Now I have to explain to my classmates, I'm in this new space. I don't want to show my business. All these
Right.
different things are so important to think about, and COVID just added to the trauma that those students were
Yes.
already dealing with. So helping
Yes.
caregivers and teachers to really understand different ways to support those students in foster care. I mean, they're dealing with the whole to be vaccinated or not, because you have their
Yes.
actual parent who may say yes or no, and you may have the caregiver that says, well, I want the kid to be
Well.
vaccinated, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Just all these different things, and the kid is in the middle. So in all that we
Yes.
do, it's important to keep the focus on the kid. Like, don't get so
Yes.
caught up as adults that we forget What about this kid? Giving the kid a voice. Sometimes
Yes.
we talk as adults. We
Wow.
don't stop to ask the kid, what do you prefer? What do you
Yes.
like? You know?
Yes. And how are you feeling about this? And let's have
Right.
this conversation about it. How are you going to be? I'm going to go back to what you and Paula just said. How is this? How can we make you help you to feel safe? How do we get to
Hmm.
make you help you to feel heard? In
Right.
everything because it's about there. Since COVID made stuff so difficult, it really did, and that's why conversations are so key. And sometimes the conversation might get heated, or as I'm expressing myself, y'all know we just expressive. Yes, yes. Hashtag salute. Hashtag Gigi. Yes, that's right. Let's salute Gigi.
And
That's right.
And you know what? I love that they put that because, in addition, we were still trying to deal with the death of Kobe and Gigi, and then
Yes,
this happened, and so some people
yes.
didn't even get to mourn that loss. Of what
Mm-hmm.
happened with Kobe. There's
Mm-hmm.
and kids, like, yes, it's affecting
Mm-hmm.
adults, but it was affecting kids too. And
Mm-hmm.
so I remember going back to have a conversation about Kobe Bryant, like death. Someone
Yes.
said earlier,
Yes.
how do we help kids and talk about grief? And
Mm-hmm.
some kids may have maybe mourning the loss of a relative, and some kids may be trying to figure out how to deal with the death of their favorite basketball player. We can't
Right.
downplay any of those feelings because grief is real. And being there for kids
Mm-hmm.
and listening to them and checking in with them. And it's so easy for us, especially during COVID, to get lost in the sauce. And what I mean by that is
Mm-hmm.
we are so busy as parents going, let me
Yes.
go over here and do this. And our kids
Yes.
have their head down in their tablets or on their computers. So we
Mm-hmm.
don't really always know who they're talking to. And if
Mm-hmm.
we are online at home working, we can't always be online with them. So being able to
Yes.
monitor what's going on, or paying attention to kids who are isolating themselves because maybe they're dealing with grief, they're dealing with depression. But
Mm-hmm.
some people will say, "Oh no, my kid's fine. They're quiet. They don't cause me any problems." Pay attention to that too, because that silence
Yes.
speaks volumes. And
Yes.
so just continuing to check in.
And that's why I'm saying we and parents, we want to encourage you what Dr. Kimberly is sharing with us. When there's been a change in behaviors, they're no
Hmm.
longer interested in doing some of the things they were normally doing. Especially if you know your kid is a Y2K fanatic, and that no longer interests them, or they're no longer interested in they're sleeping too much, or maybe not sleeping enough. They're eating too much, or maybe not eating enough.
Hmm.
Going back and forth, they drop friends. Those are warning signs that we need to say, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? And as opposed to, instead of saying, we were talking about this, and saying what's wrong with you, which
Right.
is very judgmental. Parents, we
Hmm.
have to be careful in how we label and phrase something. We'll be quick to tell them, you better talk to me in the right manner. But are we talking
Hmm.
to our children? Are we speaking to them? Are we giving them permission to really share with us how they're feeling? Why is that so important, Dr. Kimberly, as we're dealing with that we as parents learn how to reframe our own language?
You know what? It's not. It's important because it teaches the kid how to express themselves. It teaches them that
Yes.
your voice does matter. But also for us, in the Black community, in the past, we were told, like, no, you do as I say. You listen to
And
me.
not as I do.
This is
Yep.
what I'm going to do, right? And
Yep.
so
Yep.
now things are changing. Kids can get online and fact check parents if they want to, like all these different things. And so being that role model, and because I want my kid to be able to speak up for themselves when they are
Yes.
in school. I want them to know how to speak to people when they are not around, when they're around other
Yes.
people. I want them to know I have a voice and I'm going to use my voice.
Yes.
Especially my sons as young Black males, they need to know how to use their voice. I mean, not just them, my daughter too, but I want them to
Yes.
know you have this voice that God gave you. It's a gift. Use it. Speak up. Think. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be
Yes.
afraid to if you know something's wrong, then speak up. There's a way that you can do it. Yes, Dr. Lakia, modeling behaviors. Like, we model so many behaviors as parents that we don't even realize it. And it's not, I talk about on my website, imperfect positive parenting. Parenting is not perfect. It is not perfect at all. But
It's
imperfect
not.
positive parenting is saying, you know what? I need to go apologize because I
I
probably,
love that.
I can apologize to my kid, role modeling what it's like to apologize. Again, like I said earlier, being transparent about how you feel during COVID, because COVID has created a lot of tension. Some parents are
It
at home
has.
arguing more than they should, because it's like,
Yes.
I have looked at you now
Yes.
for the past 20 months. And it's not the same look as when we first got
It's
married.
not.
No, I'm not necessarily talking about myself, but what I'm saying is that being able to recognize that, because kids are listening, they're listening
They
and paying attention,
are.
and to go back and say, I know you heard your dad and I. What I meant to say was, or just saying,
Yes.
we've been here frustrated, and sometimes, um, I say stuff, and this is what I meant, or whatever it might
Mm-hmm.
be, because I
Mm-hmm.
remember as a kid hearing my parents argue, and there was never any follow up. And I've taught my kids, some mom and dad sometimes they don't get along because we're human and we're two different people. We may not agree, but we can
Right.
respectfully disagree through our dialogue and conversation, and we're normal people. It doesn't mean, oh, you had an
Yes.
argument, you're leaving,
No,
and it's
exactly. And so
COVID
you're
has
teaching
been.
them love. Yes.
Yes,
And how to love in difficult times. This is definitely a
yes,
difficult time. Daryl, can you go back to the comment that John Henry had put up there? Because I love that when he talked about how to talk to. He says, perhaps we consider asking our children, how are you feeling? And how can I help? Especially the how can I help? How can I
yes.
support you during this time? What can I do differently? And how can we do this? And I think those regular check-ins are so important. I do it when I
Hmm.
do couples therapy, and I think we should do this with kids too. I might ask, hey, Dr. Kimberly, how can I support you in being successful today? And then at the end of the day, I want to follow up at the end of the day too. Hey, were you successful? Were you able to achieve that goal? And if so, let's celebrate it. If not, what can I do differently to support you so that you're achieving it tomorrow? And those little check-ins can mean the world of difference in someone's life.
I love how you said let's celebrate it, because there's science behind when we accomplish a goal and how we feel and how our
Yes,
dopamine levels
yes,
rise, and just
yes.
just being aware of that, and just like
Talk
that
to us,
that
doctor.
trauma kind of gets us down. When we do things that demonstrate resilience, when you check off a goal,
Yes,
that
yes,
feeling that you get, that like I'm talking about those dopamine levels. So when we do things,
yes,
the fun feelings, that feeling you get when
yes.
I've accomplished this goal, or I was able to do something that I love, or I ate some chocolate and it made me feel good, or some
Come
some of
on.
the things you can do to make you happy, and it's
Yes.
important to do those, because the same way trauma works, we can also have the reverse. We experience
Mm-hmm.
vicarious trauma. We also
Mm-hmm.
experience vicarious resilience through our kids, through
Yes.
other people. The resilience, we say kids are resilient all the time, but do kids know they're resilient? Going through COVID,
Right.
instead of highlighting the
Right.
fact that my kid is behind this year, guess what? A lot of kids are behind. But how about we highlight, you are amazing. You learned a lot of new technology
Yes.
last year. My
Yes.
kindergartner can now go on Zoom, or my kindergartner can type this stuff up. Continuing to highlight that resilience in our kids just
Yes.
lifts them up, because they don't need to be told all the time what they're doing wrong or what they didn't get
Wrong.
last year. A lot of us didn't get stuff last year, but guess what? They're still standing. Some of them
We're
are
still
going to
here.
school in person. Some of the kids are saying, yeah, I know COVID is scary, but I'm going to go to school anyway, and I'm going to wear my mask, and I'm going to protect myself.
Yes.
My daughter's in kindergarten, and I feel like she's part of the Fauci toddler task force, because she's real big on her mask. She's like,
I
Mom,
love
I
it.
had a good day at school. I put my mask on. I squeezed it right here, and I washed my hands. Like, she takes it really serious. But I look at that and I say, "You are amazing." I said, "You know how to get rid of germs, and you don't put your fingers in your
Yes.
mouth." And just highlighting any little positive thing that I can in the
Yes.
kids, because last year was so long, so
It
traumatic, and
was.
I don't think kids heard enough of how awesome they are. For our older kids, who
Yes.
the suicide rates went up last year. That
Come on.
isolation, that
Yes.
isolation. Like, if you have a kid at home that's isolated, if you can go walk at the park, if you can figure out
Mm-hmm.
what's your kid's favorite hobby. It might not be yours, but what can we do together? For my
Thank
kids,
you.
I picked up those paint those we did a couple of those COVID friendly painting things where you go follow the
Yes.
instructions and you paint the picture.
Right, right,
I was
right.
just trying to be creative. But getting your kids out of the house, if you don't feel safe, well, what can go to the park or go for a walk, but get them out of the
Yes.
house. I think kids today,
And having
especially
that
with COVID, will
conversation with
stay.
them.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
even having that conversation, I know there a good friend of mine said how he was talking to his son because his son didn't want to go anywhere and saying, "Hey, son, it's okay. Can we go to the can we walk to the corner and walk
Mm-hmm.
back?" And I love it. I'm one about celebrate. I love celebrations. I think we have to learn to celebrate the small things in life because you're really right. Because
Mm-hmm.
as we learn to celebrate those things, it gives us that power and the courage and the energy to try something else, to go the next mile. So went around the block today. Hey, maybe I'll go around the neighborhood the next day. And then we just take it one step at a time. And that is so important when it comes to our children. And I think you're absolutely right with that. Can we just touch on before we get out of here? September is Suicide Awareness Month. And we know,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, that the suicide rate did increase. We know
Mm-hmm.
that, and it's something that is not highlighted, especially with our young people. How do we delicately, and I don't think, and I say this because a lot of times when we talk about suicide, people get very nervous and all that. And I've lost a patient to suicide. He was no longer my patient at the time, but I got a call from his mom and said, "Please tell me he didn't." She goes, "Yeah," and because. How do we have those conversations about suicide awareness and being aware of when your child is doing something different, or maybe we don't even know? What are some things that we can do to help combat that in our communities? Because I think we're not talking about it enough in our communities.
Right, we don't. Sometimes I think we feel like if we don't talk about it, it's not going to happen. But
Right,
being okay with having a conversation, asking, have you ever felt this way? I've asked my son before, have you ever felt that
right.
way? Because at school, I just remember him, not having a lot of friends, and he would tell me like at,
Sure.
at recess I sit by myself, or and I started noticing some
Right.
things, and so I had a conversation with him about, do you know what suicide is?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's
Do
good.
we talk about mental health, and I tell him there's mental
Yes.
health and there's mental illness. And I say, I take you to the doctor to check on your
Mm-hmm.
knee, or you get a checkup, or if you are feeling sick. I said our mental health is just as important. So I teach them
Yes.
what mental health is and why it's okay to talk to somebody. And I said, Mommy,
Yes.
I have somebody that I go talk to too. I said, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. I said, I'm fine, but I'm being proactive. And so
Yes.
not being afraid to have those discussions. I have
Yes.
something on my website at positivenoteconsulting.com. There's one of my blogs. If you go to it, I talk about, and I forget the title, but I talk about this movie that I watched with my kids, and I can't remember the name, but it addressed suicide, it addressed
Mm-hmm.
social media, it addressed
Mm-hmm.
like the catfishing thing and all that, because the
Yes.
kid tried to take his own life. And we watched it together, and it was about
Mm-hmm.
parents
That's
arguing
good.
and all that. And we had a conversation about when you're lonely, or if someone tries to
Yes.
do this on social media, or what happens if someone tries to take their own life, who you can talk to. I tell my kids
Yes.
all the time, you can talk to me
Mm-hmm.
about anything. No question is off limits. So when I
Thank you.
tell you, I,
Thank
I
you.
want them to feel like you can come to me, because if they're not talking to us, then they're going to talk to
They're
Google and
talk.
YouTube.
Yep.
And so
And it's
I want to
better that
teach
it
them
comes
first.
from us. That's right.
Hmm.
We have to be still our children's first teachers at home
Hmm.
and create a safety zone, a safety a safe place where they can come to us about anything that's right, wrong, or indifferent. Because you're
Hmm.
absolutely right. If we're not the ones that's instilling those things in them, they'll find someone else, and we may not like. And I would hate for any of us to live in regret when we had the opportunity to pour into our children's lives, but yet we neglected doing that because we did not have that conversation. Wow. Wow. Dr. Kimberly, we are running out of time. My goodness. Okay, before you go, any last words that you want to give to our listeners here? And two, how do we get a hold of you? How do we follow you?
Okay, well, I'm on Facebook at Positive Note Consulting. Same thing for Instagram. And I have a journal coming out in a few months where parents, it's a parent and me journal. So it's a journal for parents,
Love
it's a
it.
journal for kids as well. So check the website in a few months and you should see that. But if I had to leave parents with something, I would say, you know what? You're doing great. Like don't use
Love it.
social media as a benchmark to say, look at what they're doing. Get tunnel vision for what's going on in your own home. And your
Yes.
kids are different than the kids on your friends' kids.
Yes.
Your kids are who God gave you. And be
Yes.
intentional about pouring love into them, and then find some time for yourself. My friend Dr. Lakia, she has a company called Elevated CEO, and you can look them up on Facebook as well. But she offers self-care. Um, she
Love
offers
it.
suggestions for self-care. And parents, we need to do self-care. And self-care is not just I went to the grocery store by myself. You need to do some real, if it's getting out, walking, talking to God outside at the
Yes.
park, or
Yes.
just doing some, go to dinner by yourself because you don't have a
Come
kids
on.
menu in front of you. You can order what you want. You don't have to have, kids ice cream. You can have, there's going to be a cup on the table and it's not going to be plastic. So do
Right.
some things for yourself. But if you don't pour back into you, parents,
That's
it's going
so
to keep
good.
being challenging. So put that oxygen mask on first, love yourself first, and pat yourself on the back and say, nobody's kid is perfect, but my kid is who God gave me, and I'm going to love
That's
everything
right.
about this kid and support them. So
That's
that's
right.
that's my little
Okay.
2 cents.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty, but we're going to make this happen here. My camera always freezes, but you can still hear me. Yes. Dr. Kimberly, are you doing a launch party for your journal?
I will. Yes, yes, I will.
Sorry about Are you doing a launch party for your journal?
Yes, yes. So
Okay.
I will, if you don't mind, I'll come on the show and do the launch party.
Yes. That's what look, indirectly asking. We want to do a launch party with you.
Okay,
Yes,
I would love to do that.
we would love to, because I'm all about providing resources to the people who need them. And this is amazing. So, y'all, you heard it again, positivenoteconsulting.com. Please check out Dr. Kimberly. Dr. Kimberly, thank you for coming on the show. Trust me, this is not going to be your last time on the show. We're going to have you come back. And anytime you want to come back, listen, you know my peoples, how to get a hold of us. We would love to have you. Listen, we needed about a two-part on this because you dropped so many great jewels on us tonight that we are so grateful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So Stephanie, y'all, again, thank you for joining us for this. I can't wait for the journal. I know that's right, Lakia. I'm getting mine too. Definitely. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of COVID Crisis and Kids. We are so glad to have Dr. Kimberly come on here and just share with us some great, great nuggets. If you take away anything, take away Dear COVID. Sit down with your children and have them to write a Dear COVID letter. Sit down with your children and speak to them about what they're going through. Speak with your children. Do a family Zoom call. What a better way to have the conversation so that we can stop the stinking thinking. We are so grateful to have Dr. Kimberly. Again, please check out our couple things we're doing. Our website at mentalhealthmarty.com, where you can find some amazing gear and mental health things to support you in this journey. We have an amazing t-shirt out there and sweatshirt. And please check out our journal also on Stop the Stinking Thinking Journal. That's going to be accompanying the Stop the Stinking Thinking book that's coming out in October. Yes, Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to make sure I get it. And Black Mental Health Matters. That is our latest t-shirt and sweatshirt that is on our website. Please check it out. And then we also have a podcast, Mental Health Matters with Marty. Please check out our podcast. On that podcast, we are going to be launching our new series starting next month as well on the podcast. But if you're an Apple listener, please give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review and become an I Matter member of Mental Health Matters by texting I Matter to 855-717-1272. Again, thank you for joining us for this week's edition of COVID and Kids. featuring Dr. Kimberly Faulkner-Camacho. We are so glad that she was here today with us. Please check out her website, Positive Note Consulting, and we will definitely see you next week as we continue, and as we always remind you to stop the stinking thinking that you don't have to secretly suffer in silence and the shadow of shame. But you'll know what I say each week. You got to speak up, speak out, and live so that you can enjoy your life. See you next week. God bless.
Enjoy your life.